Welcome to the Sparkroom webinar series. Sparkroom provides full-service, data-driven marketing and technology solutions to ignite your performance marketing. Our webinars provide actionable advice and insight to help you better strategize, execute, analyze, and optimize your marketing campaign efforts.
From January 1st through June 30th, 2015, we'll be paying special attention to Q2 2015 since it reflects the most recent activity. Sparkroom's proprietary lead management system has captured and processed over 55 million prospective student inquiries since 2010. The data spans virtually every marketing channel and encompasses over 200 campuses at 6,000 programs. As in previous reviews, we'll use this to help get a handle on what sort of trends higher education marketers are seeing in order to help all of you better understand how your organization stacks up for 2015 so far. I'll make notes of specific definitions and terminology as I go through, but feel free to type a question in at any time or clarify with us at the end of the presentation. For those of you who have seen our webinars or read the quarterly review white papers in the past, we'll be covering a lot of the same topics this time around. Specifically today, we'll be looking at the continued inquiry volume decline, how conversion rates seem to be leveling off a bit, the share of inquiries coming from each of the major marketing channels and what has and hasn't changed about school media mixes, third-party or affiliate channel cost trends, and then a bit of focus on some specific graduate degree and healthcare programs that have been growing steadily over the past year and a half. We'll see where those programs in particular seem to be heading and how schools are continuing to adapt their program rosters to compete in today's higher ed landscape. We'll kick things off by looking at inquiry volumes, which, as the headline states, declined yet again. But the good news is that drop-off seems to be lessening a bit. Here's the overall inquiry volume trend from January 2014 through June 2015. Overall, Q2 2015 was down just over 13% year over year. But if we compare Q2 2014 to the same time frame in the year before that, the decline then was even more substantial at 21%. Another encouraging sign is the June 2015 volume comparison, which is just 8.8% below the prior year, an even slower rate of decline. In fact, June had the smallest year-over-year variance of any month so far in 2015, which we're hoping is an indication that the inquiry volume drop-off is starting to slow for the first time in several quarters. To back that out a little bit more, here's how the first two quarters of the year stacked up to the previous time frame from 2013 to 2015. 2013 was really the last time when we saw substantial across-the-board inquiry volume growth of about 13.6% compared to 2012. Q1 and Q2 2014 cumulatively fell just over 15% from that time frame, and as mentioned, the rate of decline in 2015 has been slightly lower. But when we net out all of this up, and especially down, of the past few years, what we end up with is an approximately 18.23% gap between where we were in 2012 and where we are in 2015 so far. This softer demand is coming partially from reduced marketing budgets, which is a consistent theme we've been hearing from schools over the past couple years. But student enrollments have also been on a downward track over the past few terms. The National Center for Education Statistics recently released spring enrollment numbers, and as you can see here, virtually every sector shows some sort of year-over-year declines for the most recent term. The average rate of decline was 1.9% across all school types. While four-year public and private not-for-profit schools were the lucky ones, remaining stagnant this past spring, four-year for-profit and two-year public schools have seen substantial drop-off. The two-year publics had a nearly 3 to 4% decline every term, and there was an even more drastic variance for the for-profit group, albeit with a slight reprieve in fall 2014. So although we can certainly attribute at least part of the inquiry drop-off to schools dialing back their paid marketing efforts, it's clear that weaker student demand is also impacting these numbers. And if the front-end inquiry volume is any leading indicator, it's likely that we'll see this flat or lower enrollment trend continue for schools in all sectors, at least during the short term. Let's break that down a little bit further to look at differences in campus-based versus online program demand. This time last year, one of the major trends we identified was that inquiries for online programs were lower than those for campus-based programs for the first time since 2012. Many schools' large online programs were beginning to see reduced enrollment growth or even enrollment loss, particularly as more schools began launching distance education initiatives. As a result, many higher ed marketers began substantially reducing media spend for these programs based on limited growth potential. You can see that January 2014 was one of the last months of the strong online program inquiry volume. As 2014 continued, so did the trend of online inquiry volume falling nearly every month, particularly when you compare it to campus-based programs. But in 2015, this gap has measurably widened. Now online program volume is regularly between 20 and 30% lower than that of campus-based programs. There have been differences in the 18-month trending between the two as well. Online programs had more significant inquiry volume decline in the first half of 2015. Total volume in Q2 was just over 21% below last Q2. Campus-based programs had a much slower rate of decline and were well below the average volume variance, losing only 4.3% inquiry volume in Q2 2015. In fact, campus-based programs actually saw a slight increase of almost 2% year over year in April 2015. While that trend didn't continue in the whole quarter, it was definitely a positive sign to see these numbers coming back into the slight growth territory. Moving on from the very front end of the funnel, let's take a look now at how student inquiry conversion performance has fared in 2015 so far. It's important to note a couple of things as we look at the numbers. First, a conversion here is considered any prospect who has applied, enrolled, or started at the institution to which he or she inquired. Because our schools use different milestones to measure marketing performance, we'll use these as a single measure designed to designate a student who took at least some major step towards starting classes. And secondly, when we're looking at performance within a given month of a quarter, that time frame is defined by the date an inquiry was received. We then track that student inquiry cohort over time and attribute any conversions back to the time of original submission. That way, we're able to accurately track how marketing channel performance shifts over time and impacts student enrollments. So with all of that in mind, here are the past 18 months worth of conversion rates across all channels and school types. One thing that made us pretty optimistic throughout much of 2014 and into 2015 was a positive performance trend line. 2012 and 2013 weren't really great years for inquiry performance, with aggregate conversion rates staying largely flat or declining nearly every quarter. But starting in 2014, possibly due to big shifts in media spending and reduced budgets, conversion rates began to improve nearly each quarter. Q3 2014 had a 37.5% higher conversion rate than the year prior, and Q4 2014 finished the year with an over 80% improvement. In fact, Q4 2014 came in at an average 7.9% conversion rate across schools and channels, by far the strongest performance we've seen in the past few years. Q1 2015 has also been faring well, up 22.25% compared to 2014. So far, Q2 2015 has remained below prior year rates. The conversion rate is at nearly 6.24% currently compared to 6.81% last year. That's a nearly 16% decline in performance so far. However, given that the prospect cohort is still coming up on major fall term starts at many schools, and the fact that we historically have seen strong performance gains in May and June particularly, it's likely that the final rate will land at or slightly below last year's performance. Let's unbundle performance a little bit further to look at campus-based and online program trending separately. That late 2014 boost is evident in both campus types, with performance peaking in late Q3, early Q4. Online programs also made considerable efficiency gains throughout early 2014, coinciding with those more substantial inquiry volume declines. Let's back this up to also include 2013. This helps to highlight a bit more clearly just how much ground was made up last year. As you can see, 2013 remains fairly consistent month over month, with some slight seasonal fluctuations. But after hitting a low point in Q4 2013, these numbers have been climbing steadily throughout the year. So while these numbers are starting to even out a bit, there's still been measurable improvement from where inquiry performance was this time 2 years ago. One thing I wanted to share as part of the conversion performance discussion has to do with how long the average student prospect takes between when they first inquire and when they ultimately apply, enroll, or start classes. These numbers are taken from the 2014 inquiry cohort and help to highlight the average cycle lengths for each of the milestones in each of the various program segments. Inquiry to application timelines average between 30 and 45 days. The longest lapse is for online grad programs, which is likely due to the high level of competition we're seeing for that category and the ability of students to shop multiple options at once. Shortest time frame is, conversely, the online undergrad segment at just over 30 days. Falling somewhere in between are the campus-based program types, which are both just over a month. Inquiry to enrollment timelines show a lot more variance, anywhere from 38 to 73 days, highlighting the difference in enrollment processes and requirements across the various groups. In this case, campus-based undergrad programs have the shortest cycle time, just barely longer than the average inquiry to application timelines. The gap between online undergrad inquiry to enroll and inquiry to app is about 12 days, which is much longer than the average of just 3.5 days for campus-based undergrad. In fact, it's a lot closer to the campus grad delay of 15.5 days, though the total inquiry to enrollment cycle time is still greater for these programs, with an average of 55.5 days. And inquiry to start timelines are averaging anywhere from 60 days to 80, with the biggest gap between online undergrad and online grad programs. Individual school starts tend to vary much more widely based on the different timelines. Some have fixed start dates only a few times a year, while others allow admission on a much more frequent basis. And what these numbers help us better understand is how long we'll need to finally evaluate how Q2 2015 performance will end up. Given the relative lack of time that May and June inquiries had to convert by the time the data was pulled in mid-August, it's very likely that these numbers will continue to increase as the cohort matures. We'll be keeping an eye on how that performance metric changes as the year goes on. One of the biggest factors when it comes to inquiry performance is media mix. And as the title of this section hints, we've seen pretty consistent media strategies by schools so far this year. Along with the reduction in overall inquiries, one of the media trends that really caught our attention last year was a gradual shift away from third-party or affiliate inquiries and towards a higher share of first-party branded inquiry channels. Third-party sources, which tend to be very scalable, high-volume, low-quality inquiry channels on average, used to dominate school media plans. In the first half of 2013, the share of inquiries coming through affiliates was at nearly 2/3. Prior to 2013, many media plans would be made up of up to 70 or even 80% affiliate sources in some cases. Move that ahead 1 year into 2014, and that share dropped to just 58%. When we really got under the hood to see what was driving down inquiry volume throughout 2014, we found that one of the largest factors was a drastic reduction in affiliate media budgets and thus inquiries. What resulted was a lower inquiry volume, but overall higher conversion rate, something that schools use to help gain marketing and operational efficiency. But now looking at the first half of 2015, the shift in mix seems to be slowing down. After reaching a low point in Q4 2014, marketers are back to averaging about 57.5% of their inquiries coming from third parties year to date, so it's remained virtually unchanged. As mentioned, third-party sources can contribute a high volume of inquiries, but performance tends to be much lower as a result. Inquiries are often going to multiple schools at once, something that doesn't tend to happen with first-party channels. Additionally, large third-party aggregators often use a mix of high and low-performing channels to produce requested volume at the right aggregated price point, which can result in uneven quality for many schools. As a result, affiliate conversion rates have hovered right around 2% for most of the past 2.5 years. Compared to first-party channels like paid search, SEO, and referrals, which are converting at between 7.5% and 9.5% on average, it's not surprising that marketers continue to seek ways to rely more on these sources and less on affiliates. But scaling these channels is a much longer-term proposition. So while shifts away from third-party traffic are expected to continue, they'll likely be happening at a much more gradual pace in the future. The good news for schools attempting to scale that first-party traffic is that, despite inquiry volume and enrollment declines, school-related queries are actually back on the upswing. According to Google's Q2 2015 education search analysis, there was a 2% increase in prospective student searches after last year's slight decline. And while school brand-related searches grew just 1% during that time frame, non-brand queries actually grew 8%, which is a nice increase in what are likely prospects at the very beginning phases of their education research. Let's break first and third-party categories down a bit more to see what has changed so far in 2015. Affiliate channels are listed on the left, along with the share of total inquiries, and first-party channels are listed on the right. Starting off with the third-party sources, traditional affiliate data inquiries are still driving the bulk of this traffic and traffic overall. The total share of just over 55% has remained virtually unchanged from the same time last year. But alternate affiliate products, such as cost-per-click network placements and hot transfers, now account for about 3.5% of all third-party inquiries. One of the highlights we've seen within our agency media portfolios has been affiliate hot transfers. Although there's still a low volume channel overall, the inquiry share has increased from 0.86% to 1.09% year over year. It's not a huge increase, but it does show some positive momentum driven by encouraging results. We'll take a closer look at cost and performance for data versus transfer inquiries here in a few minutes. Now moving over to first-party channels. Both school website and paid search inquiry share has increased by a full percentage point in Q2 2015. As schools rely on these channels to capture prospective students at various stages of the funnel, they become increasingly important as main conduits between schools and prospective students. Scaling organic traffic is definitely a long-term strategic initiative, and paid search traffic can be expensive to grow quickly. Hence, both channels slow but continued volume share growth moving into Q2 2015. Email, display, and offline media channels such as TV, radio, and print all have relatively flat volume shares year over year. However, these channels typically assist inquiries via other channels as opposed to directly contributing large volumes of last-click inquiries. These are likely contributing to that boost in website and paid search traffic without really receiving full credit, something that can and should be tracked as part of schools' multi-channel marketing attribution reporting. Referrals, unfortunately, continue to decline. They contributed just over 5% of inquiries in Q2 2014, but are now down to just over 3%. On the plus side, these inquiries continue to convert significantly higher than other channels, with a 17.7% average rate in Q2 2015. That rate is up from 12.7% in Q2 2014. So the bright side is that although there are fewer referral inquiries in total, performance has improved somewhat for those that are still coming in. Social media is by far the fastest growing channel, building on momentum we've seen gained in 2014. This channel, which is made up of networking sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, made up just 0.07% of inquiry volume in Q2 2013. In 2014, that share jumped to just shy of 0.7%, and in this past quarter, it's now at 1.77% total share. When we look at what the largest sources are within this category, the bulk seem to be coming from Facebook, which is unsurprising given just how much it and its ad products have evolved in the past year. Practically every quarter, we've seen some sort of growth and change for social media networks. Given that the large user populations are now established in virtually every outlet, it's likely that this will continue to evolve as both brand building and direct response marketing outlet across all devices. We'll shift our channel conversation a bit now and look at average third-party inquiry costs in Q2, which, along with performance and media mix, remained relatively unchanged. Overall, cost per inquiry has increased just 1.16% for the first half of 2015 compared to the same time frame last year. After remaining flat through much of 2013, inquiry costs increased each quarter from Q1 to Q3 last year. Interestingly, this also happens to coincide with the quarters where we saw some of the lowest volume and highest overall performance. But numbers have evened out moving into 2015 and now average right around $40. As I mentioned earlier, affiliate hot transfers have become a highlight of third-party channel performance, but they do come at a premium cost. On average, hot transfer costs come in around $100 each, a number that has fluctuated a bit but actually grew slightly in 2015. But the performance of these channels definitely lines up with the cost, particularly over the past year. While data inquiries costs remain in the $40 range, their conversions don't fluctuate much beyond the 2% mark. Hot transfers, on the other hand, are regularly converting between 4.5% and 5.5%, so approximately a 2 to 3 times better performance for that 2 to 3 times increased cost. Monitoring cost and performance related to each individual method is key in making sure that the affiliate channel as a whole maintains targeted ROI. And that's especially true as marketers look more to these alternative products to boost exclusivity and efficiency. Now let's shift gears a bit and look at some degree and program level trends. We'll start by looking at degree volume performance, particularly focusing on online graduate program growth. First, to provide a little context, here's a breakdown of inquiry volume by degree type in Q2 2015 for campus-based and online programs. For the schools in our data set, campus-based institutions are predominantly focused on programs at the undergraduate level and below, accounting for 97% of total inquiries. Associate's degree volume actually grew slightly for campus programs in Q2, up 2.7% year over year. Bachelor's degrees had a slower than average rate of decline, particularly in areas of studies such as business, nursing, and psychology. Certificate and diploma programs are nearly exclusively offered at campus institutions and maintain almost 50% of total inquiries between the two. With the exception of associate's degree inquiries, the degree mix for online program looks like the exact opposite, with the bulk of inquiries coming in for bachelor's degrees and above. Certificate and diploma programs are nearly non-existent here, but graduate level programs, master's and doctorate specifically, account for just over 40% of all inquiries. Before we move on to the graduate programs, here's a quick look at what program subjects are driving the most volume at undergrad degree levels and below. Certificate and diploma programs are getting the most interest in two main areas: hands-on health careers, such as clinical and medical office assisting, which make up almost 30% of inquiries, and hands-on trades such as HVAC, and the next largest program, welding technology. HVAC was one of the fastest growing programs at the certificate level, up 28% year over year. Associate's degrees have a slightly different focus. Business administration is a top program for both online and campus-based schools, but is most prominent in the online format. 21% of all associate's inquiries came for online business programs in Q2 15. Computer and information sciences is one of the fastest growing associate's programs, up nearly 70% since last year. And medical assisting is still a strong program here, although it's not quite as popular as it is at the certificate or diploma levels. And finally, bachelor's degrees have some new programs at the top of the list this quarter. Business administration, which is definitely not new, is still the largest for online. But at 11% of total volume, it doesn't quite have the share that the associate's degree version does. Registered nursing now makes up almost 9% of all bachelor's inquiries and has grown most significantly at this degree level. And finally, the web and multimedia design program has increased 9% since last Q2 and is now one of the largest campus-based bachelor's programs. So even though we saw previously that online programs as a whole declined about 21% since last year, there have been very different trends for the undergrad and grad level degree inquiries. Here's a quarterly breakout of that volume by degree category. Undergrad volume peaks in Q1 2014 and drops off substantially throughout the rest of the year. By the time we get to Q2 2015, volume for these programs has dropped 18.2%, which is faster than the average rate of decline. Compare that to the grad level program inquiry volume. Even though there's still more undergrad program inquiries overall, and even though the change has been a lot more gradual, the growth we've noticed is pretty significant. Up just over 22% from Q2 2014, it's clear that there's been some slow but steady momentum building with these programs, especially in the online format. As we've seen in previous quarters, the most popular graduate program categories are professionally focused areas. The ever popular master and doctorate in business administration degrees drive the bulk of the business volume. Despite business programs losing volume share at other degree levels in the past year, MBA inquiries grew 11.85% year over year, and DBA inquiries jumped up 27%. Within education, there were several subject areas with strong inquiry growth during Q2 2015. Special education, elementary education, and early childhood education and teaching master's degrees, all of which had solid demand gains last quarter. General psychology remains popular at the master's and doctoral level, as are other clinical and counseling specialties within the psychology category. Marriage and family therapy is especially popular at both degree levels. And finally, nursing's strong growth has carried through to programs at every degree level, even the relatively small master's and doctoral degrees. Both the Master's of Science in Nursing and Doctorate in Nursing Practice programs more than doubled inquiry volume during Q2 2015. And conveniently, nursing also ties in with our last topic today, a look at the programs driving growth in 2015 so far. We've seen some continuity with trends that emerged at the end of last year, particularly around the healthcare program area. These were, as a whole, the single largest category in Q2 2015, making up just shy of 30% of all inquiry volume. Demand for healthcare specialties grew 6.05% year over year in spite of the broader downward trend. Interestingly, there was growth for both campus-based and online programs, highlighting another area where online programs still have some traction. The business management, marketing, and related support services category had the second highest share of voice in Q2 15, but was down from earlier in the year when it had nearly equal share with healthcare programs. Business administration is still the #1 program subject, making up just over 60% of total inquiries. But softer demand for that and the other large business program, accounting, translated to a lower total share. Education, computer information sciences, and mechanic and repair technologies rounded out the top 5 program categories in Q2. Education in particular had a strong year-over-year inquiry volume growth, up 26.5%. Computer information sciences had a net increase of 7.67% during the same time frame and has been strong at multiple degree levels and across campus and online formats. Mechanic and repair technologies' strong showing is due largely in part to the large and fast-growing HVAC program subject, which made up 1.8% of all Q2 15 inquiries, and as we saw earlier, an even larger share of certificate and diploma programs. Healthcare is by far the most diverse of these program categories, with everything from massage therapy to medical office administration to allied health specialties falling under the umbrella. For the most part, however, the allied health subjects still have the biggest share. Medical and clinical assistant is the second largest single program subject, with almost 7% of all inquiries. It's been declining somewhat since last year's peak, however, as other specialties make up ground. Registered nursing is the fastest growing subject, especially given that it already makes up nearly 6% of all inquiries. It nearly doubled in volume year over year. Healthcare administration, which had actually seen some inquiry decline in recent quarters, was up 7% in Q2 2015. And medical insurance coding and dental assisting, both with just over 1% of all inquiries, lost some volume share, but still remain some of the most popular program subjects overall. But given its size and its rapid growth, the biggest story here has really been nursing. I mentioned it in conjunction with both top bachelor's programs for the BSN degree, as well as with grad level growth for the MSN and DNP programs. But pretty much everywhere you look in this category, it's the same story. Registered nursing has more than doubled, and so has nursing assistant training. Nurse practitioner, still a smaller program overall, saw an almost 500% inquiry increase year over year. Not surprisingly, the massive increase in interest from students is being driven by a very strong employment forecast in this field. Our partners at Gray Associates recently put together an in-depth review of the market for undergraduate nursing programs. They shared with us some of their findings about the larger market forces that make this field so attractive. Here are the BLS employment estimates through 2022, which show a huge growth in opportunities at every level, but especially for registered nurses. That occupation alone is forecasted to add over 500,000 new jobs over the next 8 years. With gainful employment regulations now in effect, this growing area of opportunity has become equally attractive to schools, who continue to add this on to existing allied health offerings. RN to BSN bridge programs, designed for professionals currently in the workforce, have grown substantially at both campus-based and online institutions. Although online programs still have the edge here, campus-based programs are also seeing more student demand, particularly moving into 2015. What's also interesting to note here are the seasonal volume spikes. July and August saw a big jump for both campus and online programs in 2014, as did December, January, and February of 2015. Definitely something interesting to note for those marketing these programs and looking for ways to take advantage of seasonal peaks in demand. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about this program, I'll be joining Bob Atkins from Gray Associates on October 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern to talk about some of the highlights from their in-depth nursing review. We'll also be covering more detailed marketing trends, such as the seasonal spikes I just highlighted, that we've been noticing as more and more of our partners are making this a cornerstone of their curriculum. But for today, that brings us to the end of the review and the question that I'm sure all of you have, Where is all of this leading, and what can we expect for the rest of the year? And I'm not going to pretend to know the future, but based on some of the info we covered today, I think there's a few things we can venture a guess on for the remainder of the year. First, inquiry volume seems to be pretty consistently coming in about 10 to 15% below last year's levels. Although the volume declines accelerated in the latter half of 2014, we've actually seen numbers stay relatively flat as we moved into Q3 so far. So it seems like we'll probably stay in the same area for the rest of the year. The end of 2014 saw some major events impact the larger market, particularly as some bigger institutions began closing or consolidating campuses in many markets and trimming online enrollment targets. While we've seen this activity continue in places in 2015, it's definitely been at a much slower pace. So I don't think we'll end up matching the 25 to 30% lower year-over-year volume we saw at the end of last year. Next, as media mix and program mix stays the same or shifts slightly towards higher performing channels, it's likely that conversion rates will remain about where they were last year. We saw a nice seasonal boost leading into the spring term start in 2014, and if all things remain consistent, we should see some comparable rates in late 2015. Although media mixes will probably not change as drastically as they did in 2014, the long-term movement towards more first-party inquiry volume is definitely something we anticipate will continue. As schools become better at leveraging alternate affiliate media products such as hot transfers, there will definitely be more opportunities to scale back on the high volume of data leads and focus on more efficient third-party channels. But ultimately, the goal of many school marketers that we've spoken with continues to be building out those strong and, more importantly, sustainable first-party traffic streams. And finally, now that gainful employment regulations are in full effect as of a couple months ago, schools will give even more attention to finding the right program and degree mix. 2015 has seen a number of schools launching or expanding nursing programs, but shorter skilled trade programs and grad level credentials in areas like education and psychology have also been gaining steam. Programs like criminal justice, accounting, and paralegal will continue to migrate to shorter or more flexible degree formats in order to remain compliant. Additionally, there will likely be more variance between program offerings within individual markets based on what sort of employment opportunities exist in each. Some of these will be unique, dictated by whether a market's demographics are showing population growth or aging, and things like the long-term outlook for specific local industries. And that's it for our 2015 year-to-date review. Thanks everyone for sticking with us, and now I'll turn it over to Michelle for any questions we received.
Thank you so much, Liz, and thank you everyone for sticking with us. I apologize, we had some audio issues at the beginning, and we're so happy you're still here with us. So as you heard, our fabulous presenter's name is Liz Dye. She's our Director of Marketing Analytics here at Sparkroom. On our day today, Liz works with some of the top brands in higher education to develop successful enrollment marketing strategies, and she does that by employing performance analysis and database decisions to optimize the campaigns. As Liz mentioned, we now will take questions. So if you have any, please type them into the question box in your webinar control panel. If you can't see the control panel at the moment, you can look for the orange box on the top right with the arrow. If you click on the box, the control panel will expand and you can type in your questions. Okay, it looks like we did have a couple of questions come in already. The first one, Liz, is what type of software do you use to track students throughout this journey? Is there a specific?
So we primarily use the Sparkroom marketing software. That's kind of our day-to-day conduit that allows us to connect the front-end marketing inquiries and activity, things like the leads by various sub-channels, clicks, impressions, etc., all the way through to individual school results. So essentially what Sparkroom marketing software does is, not to get into a little commercial, we connect school CRM and student outcome data with that front-end marketing activity. So what I'm leveraging is kind of that in-between piece. So I'm seeing what happens to each lead from each channel all the way through the student funnel. So it depends on which schools are using which specifically, but certainly there's a variety out there kind of compiling those student enrollment outcomes.
Okay, kind of along that same line, a few people are wondering if you can tell us some more about the clients that are included in this analysis.
Sure. So we primarily have a career-focused proprietary school base that's probably about, I'd say, 60% to 70% of the inquiries are coming from larger schools that are competitive enrollment marketers. But we also have some private not-for-profit schools in there, a lot of online institutions with graduate programs, a lot of hands-on careers in various markets. So about 60% for-profit, the rest kind of split between private not-for-profit and some public schools in there as well.
Great, thank you. Let's see. So another question we had was regarding the lead velocity and enrollment funnel. Are the days aggregate or specific to that stage? So in other words, is the velocity for online undergrad from application to enrollment 12 days or an additional 42 days from application?
It would be 12 days in that case. So those are each step shown there was actually inquiry to that stage. So it was inquiry to application, inquiry to enrollment, inquiry to start. We're happy to break that down. You can kind of do the subtraction there to get the rough math, but we can certainly break that down. If anyone wants to, they can follow up with us. We'll provide those numbers.
Okay, I've had a couple of folks asking if they can get an analysis like this done for their school specifically.
Absolutely. So you'll just want to reach out to the email address listed here, webinars@sparkroom.com. You can send us a note introducing yourself, your institution, and we'll be happy to reach out and certainly happy to dig into any questions you have and provide some more details.
Great, thank you. Another question is, are schools more likely to give more aid to students pursuing degrees that lead to jobs?
I would say that probably depends on the exact school. I do know with the gainful employment regulations in place, certainly the ability of students to find a job is an inherent and is a very important part of making a program offering successful. So, individual schools are going to have different priorities, but I would say that especially as these regulations become much more of a focus and become tied to schools' ability to receive funding, that it certainly will become a much more important question for those developing new curriculum.
Great, thank you. Can you go over again where all the data came from for this specific presentation?
Sure. So all of the data for this presentation, unless otherwise noted, was derived from the Sparkroom marketing software. So that is a proprietary lead management system. We process approximately 750,000 prospective student inquiries each month and have been doing that since 2010. So we primarily looked at the past 2 years, but we certainly leverage insights all the way back through the inception of that database to help us answer questions. So partially it's coming from the school CRM data house in there, and also partially from that front-end marketing data.
So just to clarify, we're not gathering data from Google or other locations like that, just from our customers.
Right, unless otherwise noticed. There was, I think, a snapshot from Google, so they provided us with their Q2 education survey. We shared some stats there. There were some numbers from BLS and some from NCES, but unless specifically cited, that was all from Sparkroom marketing software.
Great, thank you so much, Liz. Another question was, are schools likely to purchase names from SAT and ACT?
I do know that is something that has been done by schools in the past. Those lists, I believe, tend to kind of lose value pretty much from the day that they're published. So, really it's a very time-sensitive matter, but I do know that schools in the past have used that as a marketing channel or any other sort of standardized test or career fair type activities.
Great, thank you so much. I think those are all the questions we have for today. If anyone has any further questions or looking for additional information, feel free to email us at webinars@sparkroom.com and we'll get back to you right away. For more information on Sparkroom's products and services, you can always go to our website, which is sparkroom.com. If you did miss any of the information or you'd like to have a look at this presentation, I'll be sending you an email for the next couple of days coming from Sparkroom, and it'll have a copy of this whole entire presentation deck as well as a link to the recording of the presentation. So you'll also be able to check that out at our blog later this week, which is sparkroom.com/blog. So thank you so much again for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you for your time. For more performance marketing resources, including our series of on-demand webinars, go to sparkroom.com/resources.